Alrighty, folks. See if you piling in right away here on me. Happy Monday to you all. Chris Varley from Trade Ideas Support and Education team here. So as per usual on our support sessions, 12 Eastern noon, we don't have any pre-done content. Rely on you folks to drive the content with your questions on what you're looking for within the software. It's an open forum, so don't be shy. Get those questions in for me. Anybody, if you notice there's someone that's asking a lot of questions, don't be shy. They're welcome to ask all those questions and get your questions in too. You don't have to wait to get a question in. The sooner you get them in, the better. We can circle around and move up and down with the questions, come back and forth with those. So again, don't be shy with the questions. Get those in right away, and we will help with that. So a good day to you as well. And again, folks, don't be shy. It's open forum here. I don't have any pre-done content. There's no show here or anything like that. This is meant to be an open forum Q&A for you folks to get the most out of the software with your questions, the items that you're looking for. Bear with me when I turn off my notifications. That's the wrong one. There we go. So I'm not interrupted. Josh, there is no necessarily quote one place to begin, but I would say getting the basics down is more important than anything else. So if I were to send you to something specific right now, I would say you want to head to our education page and start with the Getting Started series. You understand a few of the different items that are within the software. So I just shared a link to the education page. This is what it looks like. And if you scroll on down here, there's a Getting Started with Trade Ideas here. And I would start you right with the startup and login here, then move into alerts, top list, charts, single stock window, and so on and so forth here. Some of the stuff gets a little more advanced after that. I don't think you necessarily need to get into the advanced stuff right away. Some of it you may never get into. Different folks want to use different items within the software. Those are the places that I would start you with, though. Get that down. If you have specific questions, how to build XYZ kind of scan or something like that, of course, I'm happy to help you with those here. But I do think it pays big dividends to just have some of the general ins and outs of the software first. And these first 3 videos specifically really get you a big leg up there. But again, if you have specific questions, happy to answer those for you. Everybody's journey with the software is unique, so there's no one spot that someone's going to start. Get rid of that. For the $1 million spike alert, if I want to alert me whenever 1 minute candle doubles in volume ratio, what do I use? Yeah, so first, it's not going to be looking at candles. It's looking at a rolling time frame, Sergio. So just make sure you understand that. Second, yes, in a ratio, 1 is normal, 2 is 2 times, 3 is 3 times, so on and so forth. So that's where you'd want to go with that. And it's not looking from candle to candle. It's taking a 10-day average of 1 minute volume aggregated from 10 days. So that's what that filter's doing. It's not comparing the prior minute to the current minute. We don't have a way to do that, unfortunately. All right, excellent, Josh, excellent. And then, Josh, what I generally will tell people with the software is, you get those first few videos and you may, you may go over some of it a couple of times, but we do this noon session every day, or every market day, I should say. And so, if you have questions that all of a sudden start to formulate as you're watching those videos, get those jotted down, bring them in here to us. In addition to this live session, we also have our live traders room. It's not a free-for-all necessarily like this is, but Barry, who runs that room, very software savvy. And you throw some questions at him, he's always able to help and answer for the most part. There's some things that Barry just doesn't do with the software. He doesn't do a ton with back testing, for example. So he could give you like some basic ins and outs on the back testing. When it comes to scan building itself, using the charts, different data points within the software, things like that. Barry's, top notch as far as that stuff goes. Sergio, all right, so that helps you. Good. Glad that works. So, I mean, if you want just the Mag 7, Sergio, we can make a symbols list only looking at those stocks. If you want things that are just 1.5 billion in the float or greater, we could do that instead also. And that would include obviously more than a Mag 7, but it's still a fairly limited list of stocks, 1.5 billion over that. So you let me know which direction you want to go with that, and we'll get that done. And then, as far as finding volume spikes in that, I'm just going to find, I guess, subjective volume spikes, right? So in the case of stocks like that, not going to find the type of volume spikes that you'd be finding in something like this, UPXI, for example. You're never going to see Apple do something like this. That's never going to happen. You're never going to see Microsoft do something like that. Because the only things moving those stocks in that regard are big institutions. There are no retail traders that are moving those stocks. It would take an unbelievable coordinated effort of, dozens and dozens of retail traders that had, account sizes upwards of, high 7 figures. Yes, so we'll go with option 1. You want to look at just the Mag 7. So this is how we do this. There's a couple steps involved in this, right? So first thing I would do is this. I would go to Tools, Symbol List, right? And we're going to create a new list. We'll call it our Mag 7. All right. There we go. And now that's in here. It's going to be alphabetically. So let's find it. Bear with me. Oh, comes before. Where's Mag 7? There we go. Mag 7. So we got, what is it? AAPL. The video's part of it, I'm thinking, right? Microsoft, Amazon. Who else is in the Mag 7? Meta, Netflix. Who am I missing? What am I missing? Apple, Microsoft, Tesla. All right. We could add anything to this. We could call it Mag 7 and we can put in 10 stocks or whatever it is. But so, all right. So we've got that going like that there. We press OK. And I always like to refresh from the server afterwards. So go ahead and give that a click. Now we're going to go new. And I'm going to go with an alert window for this exercise, but we could do a top list as well. If you wanted just a watch list, then you'd go with the top list, right? Actually, let me show you something with the top list first. Then we're going to move into an alert window. Mike, see what's happening. How are you? Good to see you. Good to see you. So we take this top list here and it brings open the configure right away. And if we come to symbols lists, right, we're going to go find add existing list. And this is going to be alphabetical. So we're going to scroll down to the M's. And we're going to find Mag 7. See how it says personal in the bracket right there. So go ahead and click that. And it's added it here. And I'm going to put a check mark into that box. There's a drop-down menu. Make sure that drop-down menu is only the following list. So we're only looking at stocks on this. Now, if I can leave all this blank here, I don't have to filter on anything. And those stocks will all just show here. What I can now do is this. I could come to search. And I could like put in relative volume, for example, and I could show column, right? I could do Um, let's see, 5-minute volume, right? And that's going to take a 10-day average of 5-minute volume. It's just like the 1 minute, but there's a filter breaking down over the 10 days. We could show that column. Let's see, what else can we do right now? We could do change, maybe. We're not just looking for the volume, but maybe a move and change, right? So change in percent. We're going to show that column. We're just going to go with those items for right now. And you'll see here, all those stocks are going to show on here with those data points that I put in. We got to expand this. Hold on. Let me duplicate this because it's being funny with the columns. Duplicate. There we go. And so you can see those columns that I add, and I could add other columns if I wanted as well. And so now I'm only looking at those stocks with all those things there. It's just a continuously refreshing top list. Every few seconds, it'll refresh with whatever the data's changed on these items that are in here. So it's one way to just look at a set of stocks, just that one set of stocks. We could take it further, or we could take it in a different path. We go in alert window, right? And we'll get the alert configure here, and we're going to do the symbol list thing again. Now, it kind of smartly remembers that I was looking at the Mag 7 one, so it's already here, but in case it wasn't, you'll find it over here just the same as we did. We'll put the check mark in there, only the following list, so we're good to go there. And now if we were looking for things kind of spiking up and moving, we could decide, do we want a new high? We could add that alert, right? We'll put a check mark in that box so we got a new high. I mean, if you wanted a 1 minute volume alert in there, of course, we could put that in here and we could add that. So we've got two different ways to get alerted here, and we want to throw a ratio of 2 for a minimum in there, right? Now, since we're filtering to just 7 stocks, usually when you're doing something like this, you don't want to put too many filters in there, because then it becomes tough for that few stocks to make that set of filters, right? But, we may want to, may want some kind of change also, right? So we go change, and maybe, in the alert windows, we have a change 1 minute here. So maybe change 1 minute, add that filter. We could put a minimum of 1% in there. We just kind of live with that at first and do a little trial and error and see what's going on with that as far as the scan, and if it's alerting any of these stocks and how often. We'll call it, looking at Mag 7. Press OK. And unfortunately today, going to be no alerts from this scan. Oh, I lied. All right, there we go. 932. Let's go with the history and just check if anything else might have come in early on. We'll give that a second to think. So yeah, Netflix real early on jumped on it at the bell and back in the pre-market, but that's it. That's the only one out of all those stocks that did that. So, two different ways to kind of cut that up. Now, if you're looking for general reversals, we could do a reversal scan, right? A few different ways we could look at that. Let's go over some of those ideas here. So for a reversal scan, you may consider, right, we'll go with a gap filter. And we could say, I want to find stocks that gap down. Now, I often come across people that don't understand the difference between gap and change from close. So just in case for the audience here, a gap is the change from the prior day's close at 4 p.m. Eastern to today's open at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. The change from close is always calculating where the stock is at this second from where it was at the close of the prior day, 4 p.m. Eastern. Now, we don't help folks out with understanding this in the sense of during the pre-market, the gap filter and the change from close filter work exactly the same. But come the market open, the gap filter freezes, right? And the change from close continues to calculate. So, that's just one thing to understand. So when I'm thinking reversals, the first thing I'm thinking of is, all right, let's find stocks that gap down, right? And so we could add that filter, and we could say, and I like to use the show me function here when I'm building scans to make sure I understand what the values I'm putting in is. So, we could say we want to find stocks that were down, I want to go on this side, minus 2%. So we could say, show me stocks where they open at least 2% from the previous close, right? But then You know, maybe we want to change from open because we're reversing. And we go with the percent here. I'm going to add that filter. And now I want to see that they're up at least 0.5% from the open, right? So they may have gapped down and they may have even traded down at some point, but now they've reversed. For sure, they've reversed at least 0.5% from the actual open, right? And then maybe a change over the last minute. We could leave that at a 1% there. And for this exercise, because I know you're talking about larger stocks, right? We could go with a float, right? Instead of just looking at the Mag 7, we go float and shares. Let's add that filter, and we could say 1.5. I think billion. If I put a B in there, that works, right? Does that work? Yep, 1.5 billion. So I put that 1.5 in there, right? And so now we've limited that universe of stocks. You know, it's not, you know, very few stocks at that level of float, but it's also not thousands of stocks at that level of float either. And given that, we may not want a price range on that, but maybe we want maybe a relative volume number on this, right? So maybe we could throw a relative volume of 2 on there. And I'm going to make this, instead of following just the Mag 7, let's go with all, right? And we're just going to check out and see. Now, today's not going to be a good day for find reversals, right? You know, here's the SPY. There ain't no, there's not really going to be any reversals today, right? So this isn't exactly a great day to find this, find a reversal, but you know, we could look and see what we've got going on here. And let's go today on history and then see Josh B. Try and join us in Barry's trading room. It will also. Oh, thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. Thank you for throwing that out there, Mark. Very much appreciate that. That message for Josh. Yeah, it's very convenient, the 1.5B, instead of like, how many zeros do I got on the screen there? You know, trying to count them out across there. You know, much easier. So, you know, we can see there's, you know, not a lot of stocks have reversed today with that high of a float and whatnot. So you got RDHL, right? So, you know, real large float here. Not trading a whole lot, but there it is, reversed all the same. SBSW, you know, we could eliminate things that don't trade a lot, but why is that? Oh, I left this in the gap here. Sorry, I left that 0.5 in there. I wanted that to be in the change from open. Pardon me. That was my mistake. I messed that up. Bear with me. Let's go ahead and throw a minimum volume in here of 1 million. All right, let's do that again. My apologies. All right, history today. I was confused. That should have never shown there, but because I put a value of a minimum in there. Don't look like we got any stocks that are meeting the scan today that they gap down and now they're up on the day from their gap down, unfortunately. Let's go with history. Let's go all. Let's see if we can find a day where this might have happened recently. They're not going to be many. And for those that don't know, our history look back is about 60 market days, give or take, based on how market holidays fall. What did I do here? Did I mess something up? Did I mess something up again? Find the day windows filter million. 0.5 billion, gap down at least 2%. They're up 1% in the last minute. Might need to drop that 1% in the last minute. Probably too much. There we go. Well, we got something from the 17th, right? So we got very few from the 17th, but nevertheless, it was finding a reversal here. MVO, oops. SBSW was finding a reversal there. Once it cracked over, probably it had to crack over the threshold of volume there. And so, that's a way that I would be looking at how to do reversals, something similar to that. I mean, there are other things you can do for reversals as well. For example, you find something that's off the high, but maybe trying to trade back up to it again. So a way that I would do that is position and range. So the position and range on the day, right? So we could add that filter, and then we would say something like maybe a maximum of like 70%. So we're off the high, but we're not, maybe we want to bracket it in a little bit. So we're not falling, but we're off the high. But now maybe we're looking at stocks. We look at for an alert, the running up family is a good one. Running up now, running up intermediate, one of those to say, all right, we might be off the high, but we're moving back up again. We could also look at something like a 5-minute high. So we've got this 5, 10, 15, 30, and 60-minute highs. Those are something else we could look at for if we're off the high and reversing back up like that. Just another way to slice things, whether we want to look at something that opened negative and is reversing, or it's been negative for the last X amount of time and it's now reversing. Yeah, I'll share this with you. I'm going to change the name though, because I can't share a symbol listed scan with you when it's a personal list. So let's change the name and we'll call it 1.5B float reversal. And of course, you could take it and make it your own, edit things if you wanted to get rid of, for example, the relative volume filter. You wanted to edit it. Maybe you want to make it 1.5 a little looser instead of the 2. Maybe you want it tighter. You want the 3 like that. However you want to do that. And I'll share that via the cloud for you and anybody else that so desires the scan. There you go. So excellent. So, just again, go back over the symbols list thinking about sharing. If it's a symbols list that we have created within here and you share it amongst each other or amongst ourselves, however, that will translate over, right? Because they live on our servers in a shareable place, but personal symbols won't transfer from one person to another. You're very welcome, Sergio. Happy to help with that. And then, I don't know if Josh, if you're still here, I hope you're here and you're kind of seeing some of these things while they get into like some of the more, it's not necessarily advanced, but it's important to understand what's an alert window, what's a top list, where to locate these things, the configure window and stuff like that. But this starts to become like that puzzle that'll come together very quickly. So some of the stuff that I've gone over here will be things that you'll be getting into, I think, fairly quickly with the software yourself. And if you had any questions, Josh, on what you saw there and you're hanging out here, let me know. Do what I can to get you up to speed on any of those, of course. So, all right, very good start to the session here. I see a decent amount of people here. So anybody's got questions, anybody else with questions, please don't be shy. And Sergio, if you got more questions, don't be shy. Get those in, please. I won't lie. I very much like it when you folks are asking questions and I don't have to kind of just randomly drone on about whatever, once in a while we dry up on the questions and maybe we take an overall market look, but I don't think there's a lot that I'm going to share about the market that you can't hear in 1,000 other places anyway. So, all right, we'll get rid of that, I think. And I guess we get rid of that and that. We can always come back to them if we need to. So what has this got to be? Silver, right? Gold and silver. Yep, had a feeling. That be where the crowded trade is at the moment on precious metals and mining, more specifically gold. than silver, but often they're mined hand in hand or mined by the same companies anyways, not necessarily the exact same mine. All right, nothing else coming in at the moment, but again, folks, please don't be shy. If you have more questions, get those in for me. Like I said, I'd much rather answer your questions on the software, how do we build XYZ, where do we find XYZ, how do we configure ABC, whatever it happens to be software, different ways that we can look at charts, single stock window questions, compare count window questions, so on and so forth. I'd rather do those than just talk about this here. I mean, anybody that's, doing this for a hot minute here, you can look at this, SPY chart and realize that, the selling ain't over for the time being. As they say, the best traders are the most patient traders, waiting for their moment based on their strategy and their trading plan, their market plan. It's a data provider issue. It started about a year ago, and we've been all over them about it. They just haven't come correct for us. So our contract is up with them in a couple of months, and we'll be looking to add and or change data providers for that information. Kind of a bummer. We've used them for a very long time, but not sure why they've kind of dropped the ball over the last year on us with the float. You should independently linked. So, I mean, we only offer on the symbol linking, these right here, 1, 2, 3, 4 individual colors. And you could just link things that are inside a doc only. So that's it on the linking. But, you can have, if you're looking for static charts, if you're on standard or birdie, whatever we're calling it this week, you can have up to 10 charts. You can have all those unlinked if you wanted, that they're individual and static to whatever stock you put on them. If you're on premium or the Eagle, I believe we're calling the premium Eagle at the moment through the pricing page, then you could have up to 20 charts. And again, you could unlink all those, but it's just those, in the linking itself, it's the red, green, I don't remember, purple maybe. What was it again? Yeah, red, green, purple, gold. Yeah, so you just see how there's if you right click the chart, you go to properties, you see symbol linking, there's a check there, just uncheck that, and then the chart's unlinked. So you can link it and then pick either link to everything, to a specific color. So, or you can unlink it completely. And then if you notice here, let me get my drawing tool out and take that out before, so I can circle specifically what I'm going to show here. And then Arthur, if you come across stocks that don't have a float, feel free to email us, info@trade-ideas.com. And I get those shipped off to the data provider so that we can really bang on them and tell them they're not doing a very good job for the money that, we pay them. So if you look here, you see how this is red, that chart, but this one is blue, right? And then, my single stock window's got that red right there. And then you can see my race is red, my top list is red, so all the red will only go to the red ones and the all ones as well. I used to have other charts that were linked to green and things like that. I don't anymore, so I didn't see any reason to change all this stuff the way it is anyways. How to create my list of symbols so we would start with, bear with me, let me find my menu bar. So you start with the menu bar here, right? Let me get rid of these drawings. So on the menu bar, we're going to go to Tool. Come on. So annoying. Go to Tools, Symbols List, and you're going to need to create it, right? Create a list, and you'll call it Mag7 or whatever you want to call it. And then once you've created it, you'll find it here. It'll be alphabetical. You'll give it a double click, and you'll add the stocks you want on there, right? Once you've added the stocks you want on there, you press OK, refresh from server, right? And then we're going to go New, Top List. You get the top list configure here. And then in the windows, most people still have a default that it's going to come up. It'll call every top list defaults for anybody that hasn't changed the default on it. It'll say volume leaders here. It's just a default name. It doesn't really mean volume leaders. And if you come to the Windows specific filters, it's got a bunch of stuff in there. If you're just making a watch list, I'd drop all the filters. I'd erase those values. And then you can come to columns, and you could get rid of any of the columns you don't want here. You'd select it and move it from left to right with the arrow. If you want to add some new columns, you come to the search, find the column you want, select it, show column, right? Then once you've got the column set up the way you want, and if you want any filters in there, you can add them. But generally, when someone's just looking at a few stocks, you don't want filters, you just want a watch list. So you'd leave them blank again, come back to Symbols List tab here, come to Add Existing List, and you'll find it alphabetical. So there's, Mag7, and we click on it to add it, and we put the check mark there and make sure it says only the following lists, and press OK, OK. And you got it. Now, my default, whenever I open a new top list, my top lists are always completely blank by default with these specific columns that I set up. So, what you can do if you want your top list to always open a new one a certain way, you'd set that up in the configure, right? And set it up however you want, blank and all that stuff, what columns you want. And if you want to get rid of all the filtered names, and you can name it. I've named mine default top list. Once you have it set up how you want every new top list to open, you can right click and go Save as Default. And every top list you ever open moving forward will open that way. And you can do that with charts and alert windows as well. Don't do that with multi-windows, please. Leave multi-windows to open the default the way they open. It'll run you into trouble if you change that. Gets a little complex to fix after that. So, but charts and top lists, you can open default like that. So like, for example, here, if I go to New and Chart, my charts open the same way every time. It always opens to Apple because that's what I saved it as. And there's nothing on my charts. You can see my chart just open blank like that. And that's it. So I like to keep things simple when I'm first building. I don't want to have to keep removing stuff every time I build a new one. Let's start as blank as possible, and then I can move forward from there. It's the same thing with my alert windows. I go to alert window. You'll see here my alert windows default to use the crossed above resistance alert, because I've used that a lot in my alert window building. I don't really do much with alert windows anymore. I mostly use topless, but my window specific filters are all blank here, right? And then in the summary, I called it new alert. That's it. So let me know. Hopefully that answered your question. Then I thought I'd throw a little more information at you folks there to maybe make your lives a little easier with the default. let me know if that answered your question. If not, we can keep poking at it. Make sure we get you your answer. Excellent, excellent. I'll take the thanks. So, our 99.9% of our data relies on prior days, right? So like you can't have a 10-day SMA on a stock that just started trading, right? You can't have a relative volume really on a stock that just started trading because the relative volume is a 30-day look back. So those data points only fill in when we meet the criteria for those data points. So, the best way to look for IPOs, the two best ways is this. One is if you just want to do it within the software, create a resume alert. So, and I would make the rest of this blank. I would not add any filters to it whatsoever. You're trying to catch those. Of course, you can add, whatever columns you may want, right? But I would just do a resume alert. That's it. You press OK, and anything that comes through here is either a stock that was halted and is now resuming, or it's an IPO. The other way to do it, which is a bit outside the box way, is I believe there's a site called IPO Scoop. You can look at what some IPOs are that are up and coming and set a price alert for them on the charts before they're even live. And as soon as it goes live, the price alert will go off. So IPO Scoop. I believe that's what it's called. Bear with me here. Yeah, I think this is the site here. Yep. So IPO Scoop, and you can see IPO calendar. I believe that's what it's going to be under, and you'll see where they're coming. So, for example, OMSE. Hopefully, it didn't start trading today. All right, yeah, so this hasn't started trading today, so I could go ahead and I can just set a price alert. Doesn't really matter what the price is. Save. And then when that price alert, when that stock goes live trading, I will get it. My price alert will go off, letting me know that it started trading. Those are the two best ways that I have to share for IPOs with us. There will not be a relative volume filter for the pre-market. Sorry. What I tell people, if you're looking for relative volume in the pre-market, what I would use instead is this, volume percent today. So volume, and then this one here, volume today in a percent. This takes a 10-day average of the total volume. So 100 would mean that the stock has done its normal volume for the day, 200 is 2 times, 300 is 3 times, so on and so forth. So that's, so if you're looking in the pre-market, if you've got something that's done, 20, 25, 30% of its total day's volume in the pre-market, could indicate something, pretty heavy going on with the stock. What you now have to consider, though, and you'd have to consider the same thing with relative volume, is let's just say you have a stock that trades 100 shares per day, and now it's already traded its 100 shares in the pre-market. 100 shares is absolutely nothing, but that would be like crazy amount of volume for that stock. So you still may want to have some kind of, minimum amount of shares traded on the day to weed out stocks that are doing crazy amounts of volume compared to what they normally do, but their normal volume is 1,000 shares, 5,000 shares, 10,000 shares in a day, right? So you still, even like with the relative volume, would want to weed those out with a minimum amount of shares of traded on the day like that. So that's what I would point you to with Arthur for that. Snowman, any new updates soon? The only update that I could point you to that it will be quote soon, as far as I'm concerned, would be the new chart trading. So if I go in here and I click enable trade entry, press OK. Now you see how I got a plus sign over here? I can go ahead and make a trade from here on this stock through that. Connect a broker first. Bear with me. All right. So if I go ahead and press that plus sign, it's going to come here and I could set it up. How many shares do I want? Or do I want it on dollars versus that? Do I want it, a market order? Do I want it a limit order at market, at this price specifically that I'm at now? I can set a price alert from here now too, just like that. There's also this trade ticket now. We have that to trade off the charts. This is in testing for us right now. And you can select the account from here if you want to change accounts. You have multiple accounts. I'm just in the paper trading right now, so that's on its way to you folks. Got that. Talked about that. Okay, so yeah, that's how Mark's doing it these days. How about auto trade with Brokerage Plus? Yeah, I mean, you can set up your own alert windows. So you'd create an alert. The general path to auto trading is you create an alert window. You would then back test it and optimize it, right? And once you have it, back tested and optimized to the point you think, you'd save and share. You'd save it to the cloud, right? Save to the cloud. And then in Brokerage Plus, you would come into the strategies tab. You would right click, load from cloud. You'd load that window in, and it will carry over any of the back testing metrics that you put in there. And you still come to edit trading strategy. You got to select the account it's going to be in, connect to a broker, but select the account in the strategy. And then, you'd start to set up, any of these items that are in here that you want to double check that they are in line from your back testing, your entry times, your end times, stuff like that, your order details, risk management. And then in back testing, you have to have a hold time in back testing. You must have one. You don't have to have a hold time once you're in Brokerage Plus, so you can get rid of that timed exit afterwards. So, when you're back testing, you got to pick, you don't have to pick a stop loss or a target, but you can have a stop loss and or target, but you must have a hold time. You can get rid of that once you're in Brokerage Plus. That's the general path to auto trading. Very advanced form of trading. It's difficult. It ain't easy. But the difficult part of it is getting a strategy that works. And one thing I think people get hung up on and don't understand is there is never going to be a strategy that works in all markets. You got things that'll work well in certain kinds of trending markets, but obviously long strategies right now, they ain't gonna be working. That's how that goes. Oh, thanks, Mike C. But I can't take any credit on the IPO methodology. The IPO scoop, that's all Barry. That's 100% Barry. And I'll be honest, it might have been Barry also that told me about the resumes. Now we're going way back, long before I even was long before I worked for Trade Ideas. Back when I was just a subscriber. So, and yes, in case anybody's wondering, you heard correctly. I was a subscriber for several years before I landed a gig here with the team. And then, to follow up on that auto trading question, let me drop some user guide links in here that may help you. So, we come to, you're going to want to back test a strategy, right? And then I'm going to go over a few other items that are very important when it comes to back testing and automation, because people all the time think they've got the magic bullet with it, and their magic bullet thinks that they're going to micro scalp things for a few cents and outsmart the market makers. And if I could give you less than a 0% chance of doing that, I'd give you a less than a 0%. You have a 100% fail rate on that, trying to micro scalp and outdo the market makers. So with the back tester, it uses the alert as the entry. So it's going to be a time-stamped entry because it's alert windows you're back testing. So it's a boom, this stock did this at this time, got the time-stamped alert. But the exits work with 1 minute open, high, low, close candles. So if the exit happened within a candle, it's just going to default usually to the end time of that candle for that exit. So if you have an entry and an exit that happen in the same 1 minute, your strategy is never going to work, right? Second, I've come across, I can't tell you how many people that have like, they're trying to trade stocks that are less than $5 with like 1% and 2% stops. That's not realistic, right? Think about what a 1% stop is on a $1 stock, right? The spread is higher than that stop would be, right? So, keep things realistic when you're doing these things. The things that I'm listing are a lot of things that I fell into pitfalls of myself. So I can impart something that I did poorly myself to save folks headaches. That's what I'd like to do. The other thing when you're doing back testing is you might really want to consider using a spread filter and putting a max spread in there. That max spread should, vary on values based on the price range of the stocks you're trading. I also think that if you're trying to create an auto strategy, generally you don't want to be having an alert window that looks at stocks from, let's say, $1 to $100, because the percentages and things like that vary so much that it's hugely impactful on that strategy. So you generally want to try to get tighter price ranges. Maybe you've got one strategy that's looking at stocks $1 to $3 and another one's at maybe $3 to $7, something like that. Those aren't exact numbers, but these are just kind of general guidelines to think about as you're building these strategies for automation. If you've got, if you're trying to trade stocks that are, $5 to $10 and these stocks got, 15, 20, 30 cent spreads, well, the spread could eat up all your profit, right? The back tester doesn't account for spread in the sense of it doesn't know where to necessarily get you into the stock. It's just going to get you into it based on the alert price. But, if the alert price is at $10, but you have the ask at $10.10 and the bid at $9.80, you're talking about a 30-cent spread right there. And we all know that I've done this long enough that you're never, ever going to get a good fill on a 30-cent spread like that. You're always going to get filled closer to the ask, much closer to the ask than you would the bid. And that could be all your profit within that strategy essentially being eaten up by that spread and that slippage. So again, good questions, good stuff. We got a few more minutes for a wrap up for the day here as far as the live stream goes. So please don't be shy. Keep those coming for me. What else do we have happening here? Got a little bit of a bounce happening right now. I do mean very little, but and see if we can't keep up. But and the question we got to ask ourselves is if we get some favorable headlines, which I hate the fact that right now so much is driven by headlines. Headlines will generally have an impact on the market, but not, this is much more than normal. But should we get a bunch of favorable headlines, how much damage was done, that the recovery, is it going to be more a sharp V shape or a U shape or a drawn out horseshoe? Five-star chef, White House. Yes, a former five-star chef. No, never been a chef. I've done a lot of things in restaurants. I worked in restaurants for 26 years. Chef was not one of them. A lot of cooking, never a chef. So again, a couple of more minutes I'll be here for, folks, so don't be shy if you've got more questions. Trying to think of what else related to what we've been going over we could throw at you here. Nothing else for safety's sake of trading. MLGO. I was looking at this earlier. I don't really day trade a whole lot anymore, but I was thinking about making a day trade here. I was looking at this setup, made a nice move and kind of based out in here, and then I made a nice move, and I was looking, could it base out here and get back over this? And I was watching on this move here. I didn't take it. Obviously, it ended up, not working out early on, and that move took a long time to get it going. And I don't want to buy things like that do this and come right back down that far, because my stop wouldn't have been that far down. I'd have gotten stopped out and then only to watch it do that. So that's why I'm very careful about trading stocks like this. But that's the tough part of it. Anybody could look back and say, I just should have bought it here because look at where it is. But there's no way to predict that. And all of a sudden, just for funsies sake, say we took, even just 100 shares at $12, and this thing trades all the way back down to $11.30 and change. It's a $70 loss on just 100 shares, just like that. That, percentage wise, to me, that's just too much risk. Given the stock was already up at that point, $5 and change or whatever it was. So it just, I just like to point these things out because I know how much everybody wants to trade these low float movers that are explosive and things like that. But it's, if it was easy, I'd have been doing it a long time ago. There are plenty of people that do it, and they do it well without any question. And good on them, good on them. But I still consider myself to be a newer trader, even though I have been doing this a little while. For the newer traders, these are tough things because a lot of newer traders, they're underfunded. I know what that's like. And so, not having the capital to withstand drawdowns like that is super important to understand, how much damage is done to small portfolios when you have large percentage drawdowns and how hard it is to get that back. Sellers are definitely still in charge. No question about that. This might be a silly question. Does TI have an alert that will detect algo? No, there's no way to detect algo trading. Nothing like that. No. I mean, look at this flash down on this tail right here, up above $13, and it flashes itself all the way down to get rid of that trade ticket. Flashes all the way down to $12.70. It says. All of a sudden, in just a moment or two, a flash down like that. So now I know these are, nice flyers, and when you're on the right side of them, hard to feel better than that as a trader, but you're on the wrong side of this. It's also hard to feel worse than that as a trader too. So again, stick around for another moment or two here. Any questions? Please get those in. Don't be shy. So UPIX, another high flyer today, big time. Come down. Oh, wow. I didn't realize it'd come down off that much. I wasn't paying attention to the price of it. So, oof, it's a tough one, you know. 1 million in the float. Some wild stuff. UPC, what did you do today? Who are you? What did you do? I don't know that float is right there, 178,000 in that float, but nevertheless, this thing must have done a reverse split or three, 43,000 lifetime high. So it's clearly a reverse split stock. Yeah, you know, these are things I definitely avoid. If there's anything else in here that's worth a look, really. VERV, not bad. RCKT, so Rocket Pharmaceuticals. Not shabby. Not a shabby look right there. Gap down and reversed. On this, we were talking about floats in the billions before, so this would be on the very small side of that, of course. So, all right, folks, I guess I'll begin to wind it down here if there's no other questions coming in for me. Kind of giving the auctioneer's count, going once, going twice, sold in my head right now. Waiting on another question or two if they were to come in. But if not, you know, I mentioned before Barry's Room, for those of you that are here, it's a free room to everybody and anybody, right? So, you know, whether you are a Trade Idea subscriber or not, or thinking about it, his room is a great place to hang, see the software longer, poke around for some more questions. You can find it on our website, search around there at trade-ideas.com. Let me see, I can find a direct link to it. Bear with me. Where's that Trader's Room link? You can just check out the website anyways. There it is. There's Barry's Room. You can find Barry's Room there. If you're not in that room, I truly feel you are doing yourself a huge disservice, but teach their own. Of course, we do these every market day at noon Eastern. I highly encourage folks to keep coming back to these, get your questions in, make sure you get the most out of the software. And with that said, I will shut down for the day, folks. So I appreciate you all coming in. Really appreciate the interactions, the questions. Be safe out there. This is not an easy market to be involved in right now. And no trade is a trade. Cash is a position. And those that force their trades, those that force a position, unfortunately, you find yourselves mostly behind an 8-ball. Those that have a plan and stick to that plan, whether the plan is to wait things out or the plan is to be involved, and it's a well thought out and tested plan, those are the ones that will do the best in the market. That's the way it has and always will work. So thanks again, folks. Shutting down for the day, and we will see you on the next one. Take care.